Y'all all good? We're good. We start a minute early. Is that gonna mess anything up? Everybody? No? Okay. We're good? Y'all good? All right, great. Good morning. I'm Dr. Bo Clark. I'm the East Baton Rouge Parish Coroner. Thank you for being here today for the release, the 12th annual release of my 2023 annual report. I'll just start off by saying that we have a little bit different program for you today when it comes to discussing the annual report. It is related to what I do here as your coroner, but I will let you know that if you look at the doors to my left, oftentimes not much good comes through those doors. We're talking about people who have died, lost a loved one, oftentimes very traumatically. We're talking about people that show up here because they have family members that are in mental health crises or instances where people have been sexually assaulted, and they're calling on my team of sexual assault nurse examiners to collect that forensic evidence. And certainly a lot of that has been outlined over the last 12 years in these annual reports. And what's interesting to me, and I'm just going to hit some highlights of the annual report briefly before we move on to the second part of our presentation. In the 12 years that I've been coroner, I've investigated 44,015 deaths since taking office. And of course, that number grows every day as we investigate more deaths. When we break down some of those, one of the biggest death investigations that has been come to light over the last decade has been drug overdoses. We've seen the opioid epidemic in this community really expand to large numbers of people dying. And the overdose deaths in 2023 were 289. That's 6 less deaths than last year, which certainly is significant. You're talking about 6 less people that died as related to overdoses. If we look over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, we are still lingering around a 300 number. So I don't know that if we've reached a point of statistical significance that we're starting to see a downslope, and time will tell. We'll look at the numbers again in 2024, 2025, and hopefully we can see those numbers drop down to where we all started in 2012 when there were only 28 overdoses. Still too many. We certainly would like the number to be to 0, but hopefully that's the trajectory we're shooting for. When we talk about mental health crises, we're charged in 2 parts of the law. One's called an order of protective custody, and since taking office 12 years ago, we've done 12,798 orders of protective custody. With that is another mental health jurisdiction of ours. That's called the Coroner Emergency Certificate. That is when we are charged with keeping someone involuntarily for evaluation and treatment. And we've done 88,504 of those since taking office. And so you're looking at almost 100,000 mental health cases. What's interesting to me about those numbers is you ask most of the general public, what do I do as the coroner? And a lot of them are going to say, well, you investigate death, right? Because that's what we're most known for. But you're looking at numbers comparatively twice as much of our time, energy, and effort are dealing with people in mental health crisis in this community. And then lastly, one of our smallest jurisdictions, however, it is one of our most important jurisdictions, is the collection of forensic evidence in sexual assaults. And since instituting our regional approach to that throughout the state of Louisiana, we've conducted 2,176 sexual assault forensic medical exams on adults, both men and women, adolescents, and pediatric cases. And so we've seen that number begin to grow over the years, and that's alarming. It's especially alarming because we're seeing a lot of that involving the pediatric community and children that are affected by that. And so I highlight those big figures. There's certainly a lot of other smaller figures in the report. I'll flip to the back here because there were a few things I wanted to point out. Homicides in 2023, we did 107 homicides compared to 136 the year before in 2022. And unfortunately, as we all have seen recently in the first quarter of 2024, we've worked 43 homicides. So if you start to extrapolate that data, we're worried that we're going to have a bad year when it comes to homicides in this community, because the number is not looking good so far. So hopefully there are some things that can happen, maybe that start to reduce that number, and we don't end up in a bad situation. And lastly, what I wanted to do today was, it's real easy for me to come up here. We could talk about the statistics. Of course, you want to correlate each one of those statistics with someone's life. It is a human that we're talking about. And it's easy sometimes to say numbers like 289 or 100,000 or whatever the number may be. But understand that behind each one of those numbers is a citizen of this community. And behind that citizen's community is their family and their friends and their loved ones. And so it's much, much more than just a number. It's a person. And so one of the things that I've done since taking office in 2012, it's been my mission to really educate our community on preventable deaths. Talk to you about when I see changes in the way things are happening. The opioid epidemic is a perfect example. Unsafe sleeping in infants. How can we do that better? How can we get those numbers, which is really those people, and we have fewer deaths in what I consider to be types of death that are solvable, meaning that if you do these things, then hopefully we don't have deaths in those categories. Unfortunately, we can't always prevent death, and that's just a fact of life, really. But I do believe that out of death can come life, and that's why I have a very strong working relationship with the folks at LOPA, and they're here today, and they're going to have a part of the presentation here in a few seconds. LOPA is the Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. If you have a heart on your driver's license, that's these folks, okay? That's your decision, and it's related to these folks. LOPA facilitates organ and tissue donations to save lives, and they depend heavily on referrals from coroners across the state. I'm proud to report that my office has the most referrals of any coroner in the state of Louisiana. And so we're very proud that we have this relationship with them, because out of death, we find life. In my 3 terms as coroner, now starting in my 4th term, my office has helped to save thousands of lives by honoring over 650 donor heroes and their families, thus preventing another family to mourn the loss of a loved one in an untimely fashion. And I've got permission from this person to tell you this, but actually one of my sexual assault nurse examiners just yesterday donated a kidney. And so donation is real. Donation saves people's lives, and it's incredibly important, especially when you talk about the relationship between my office and LOPA and the families that are presented with this option of taking something that's potentially very traumatic, very tragic, and turning it into a life-saving thing. So next, I'd like to introduce the executive director for LOPA, and that's Diane Brockheimer.
Good morning. It's a privilege to be here to share with you all today. It's very serendipitous timing about the press conference. It coincides with the beginning of Donate Life Month, which is celebrated nationally in April every year across the country. And a couple of days ago, it was also LOPA's 36th anniversary from their beginning, with a core purpose of making life happen through organ, tissue, and eye donation. This month's theme for Donate Life Month is Shine the Light on Donation. And it's something that Dr. Clark and his team do every single day, as evidenced by the thousands of lives they've helped save and the work they've done with 650 donor heroes across the last 12 years. As the federally designated organ procurement organization for the state of Louisiana, LOPA works with healthcare professionals and partners to honor individuals who have made the decision to become donors at the time of their death, and to offer that opportunity and for donation to their families who are suffering the loss of a loved one. LOPA also has the privilege to manage the donor registry, a database of over 2.7 million Louisianians who have made the selfless donation to indicate their willingness to become an organ, eye, and tissue donor at the time of their death. And although Louisiana is one of the highest donor designation rates in the country, it's also a state that has incredible need. More than 2,000 people wait today in transplant centers across this state to receive a life-saving organ. We are very grateful today, and it is my privilege to introduce to you all 2 incredibly brave and generous women who join us to share their stories. Their experiences are vastly different, but the lasting legacy of donation ties them together. It's my pleasure first to introduce Joan Robinson, who almost 3 years ago to this date was presented with the opportunity of donation following the death of her beautiful 17-year-old daughter, Alexis. Joan, would you like to come up here at this time?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Who was Alexis Robinson? Alexis was a vibrant 17-year-old high school senior with the promise of a bright future. She was the captain of her volleyball team. She had an unrivaled spirit that soared beyond the complexity of her high school life. She was a little and a big sister as the middle child. She was a daughter, a friend, a cousin, an aunt, a niece. Her spirit was one of love and playfulness. She was a dynamic leader in her own rights. Alexis was a powerful individual that forged her own path. Just weeks before her high school graduation, her life was violently taken away by a drunk driver. On April 2nd of 2021, I went to Tony's Seafood and ordered us a catfish Tony. Alexis has never had it before. We shared a meal before she left, and the last words was to me, "Bye, Mom, I love you." I would never get to hear her speak those words ever again. It pains my heart. On April 3rd, 2021, a drunk driver made the decision to get behind the wheel of his truck and drive drunk with a BAC of 0.21. That night, 3 years ago, changed our lives forever. I was being prepared, but didn't even realize it until a week later. While at the hospital, we had an emergency blood drive. The blood bank said they had never seen as many people come and donate blood in one person's name before. I asked her coach if we could have a prayer vigil on the field April 6th of 2021. I never thought that would be the last day I saw my child living on a machine. The damage to her brain was unfixable. If she had lived, she wouldn't have had any quantity or quality of life. Who was I to be selfish? We made the decision to take her off life support on April 5th. I left the room and was called back and asked if we would be willing to donate her organs. I didn't hesitate and said, okay. I tell you, the process of filling out the paperwork was so painful. Her dad made a statement. It feels like we tearing her up from the inside out. But I believe it was spiritual because we still said yes. We didn't have without hesitation. We had that prayer visual and balloon release on April 6th. I tell you, she packed that football field and stadium. There were so many people. I was so touched because I didn't think anybody really cared about a 17-year-old high school student. At 8:29 p.m. that evening, I received the call that Alexa has taken her last breath at 8:21 p.m. I later learned that she saved the lives of 4 recipients. I hope to one day meet them. Before I left the hospital, Alexa's heartbeat was recorded. I took that heartbeat when I received it and added to a Build-A-Bear. So I get to hear her heartbeat when I'm having moments. I named this bear Alexa's Heart, which is dear to me. I would keep her memory alive. So I started a foundation in Alexa's honor called the Spirit of Alexis Robinson. This year, on April 25th, would have been her 21st birthday. I am giving out a scholarship to a senior at Scotlandville High this year in honor of Alexis. Since she didn't get to go to college because of this violent thing that happened to her, she will be some way going to college through one of the recipients. Thank you.
As Dr. Clark mentioned, we can't always prevent death, but out of death can come life. Cheryl Armstrong is an example of a life-saving organ donation and what it means to be given a second chance at life. Cheryl?
Great morning. My name is Cheryl Armstrong, and I am a heart transplant recipient. When I went to Ochsner, I had a pacemaker, I had a defibrillator, I had an infusion pump, and I had an electric wheelchair. This is a picture of me. I received the call the day of my daughter's wedding. In the purse is disguised the infusion pump. We got the call as we were walking out of the door. My question to the nurse was, do I attend my daughter's wedding or do I proceed to Ochsner? The heart was still intact, so I was able to make the wedding. Sunday morning, what a difference a day made. I was transplanted. I thank God for the miracle of the heart. My transplant came during COVID. COVID was very unknown to everyone. I was the second to the last transplant that was performed before they completely shut down surgery. They shut down visitations, they shut down phone calls, they completely shut down the hospital. Recently, it's been 4 years since I've been transplanted, and I struggled to write the donor's family because I processed their loss also. I struggled between their death and my joy. My husband and I, we recently had a conversation. How could I convey in words to this family how deeply sorry I am for their loss, yet the joy that I had been blessed with? We came up with, it was a gift that keeps on giving. And sometimes my husband calls me the energized bunny. He said, the heart that you received must have come from a 16-year-old because I can't keep up with you. I am eternally grateful to God and the donor family. It's just so many compartments of my story that I would need 365 days to completely. And I'm basically just giving you the tad bits of the story. I am well. Of course, I'm alive. I am thriving. I'm healed. I do serve as the First Lady at New St. Luke Baptist Church. One thing I do want to say to the community of color is organ donation is so important. Never in my life would I thought I would have needed a heart transplant. When I was in high school, it was not my dream to receive a heart. Amen. And the disease that I was diagnosed with that led to the heart transplant is called sarcoidosis. Amen. And it's actually a lung disease, but it attacked my heart. And that's what led to the transplant. But I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful to the donor family. And because the donor family, a scripture comes to mind, and it's John 3:16, that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And that reminds me of the donor family because they so loved me that they gave a selfless gift, the heart, a precious gift, so that I could live. So I thank you for your time and the opportunity to share my story. May God bless you.
Joan and Cheryl's stories are both overwhelming in and of themselves. But what is more amazing is the fact that for each of the 650 donor families referred to us by Dr. Clark's office, they each have their own stories. They have stories of gratitude and hope, and they have stories of healing and grace. In recognition of the East Baton Rouge Coroner's Office and their ongoing support of organ, tissue, and eye donation, I'd like to present Dr. Clark and his team with a certificate designating them as a donation champion. And we also have a special medallion for you, Dr. Clark. This is the medallion that we give to donor families. And we put a special inscription on the back, thanking you for your partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. Well, lastly, this is the conclusion of our presentation this morning. I appreciate the media for being here and certainly spreading the word about how out of death can come life, as you heard in our stories today. I'm happy to take any questions concerning the annual report, and I'm sure LOPA would be happy to discuss any of their programs as well.
Doctor, I had a question about the overdose deaths, and was curious, does the coroner's office have any advice or recommendations, say, to public agencies, universities? I mean, we all know that the Narcan's carried by first responders and stuff like that, but how broad does the availability need to be? Like, in dormitories, should college students be able to go and access it quickly? Does your office have any recommendations so that people who are doing drugs don't end up as one of your clients?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. In the 1980s, we had a lot of people dropping dead from sudden cardiac death. And our response as a community to that was to this thing called the AED, the automated external defibrillator. We knew if we applied electricity, a lot of times we could save people's life. And I equate that now to the opiate epidemic. Now we have such a proliferation of first heroin, now fentanyl that is in and around the street, and people are being exposed to it. That a rapid response to that through the use of the drug Narcan would definitely potentially save lives. And if we could save their life, then maybe we could get them treatment. And if we get them treatment, maybe we can make them drug-free. So I think Narcan should be everywhere. I think it should be just like an AED, present in facilities, in and around, or on persons. I mean, have it. I've spoken to several young groups in the LSU campus area, and a lot of them have gone to the extreme of making sure they have Narcan available at their fraternity, sorority houses, things like that, because they know that response has to be that quick to save someone's life. So that's our recommendation. Anybody else? Great. Thank you for coming.